Welcome to the Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. Each week we investigate themes of leadership, entrepreneurship, and mindset with some of the greatest minds in real estate. And now, the data scientist of real estate, George Roberts.
Welcome back, entrepreneurs. Today we have Don Spafford, who is a partner with 𝐻𝐵𝐶𝐶 Capital, an outdoor hospitality investment company who specializes in RV resorts and marinas. These are purchased through syndications, open to both accredited and non-accredited investors. Welcome to the show, Don.
George, my pleasure to be here finally.
Yeah, absolutely. It becomes a lot easier to have you on the show now that you just recently left your W-2. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, that is exciting for sure. So where we are, we're early in 2023. I left my job at the end of 2022. Something that I put in motion or in plans as soon as I bought my first investment property about 5 years ago. I gave myself the goal to have that option to leave my W-2 within 5 years. And I'm glad to say I was able to make that happen. And I did it all through real estate investing.
Great. So what is it like now that you're on the other side?
At the beginning, I'd say it was a bit scary. Even taking that step to tell my employers that I was leaving. I've been there for almost 19 years. And, I was like, man, this is a huge step, right? To let go of that, not quite, we'll say golden parachute, but having that more or less guaranteed income coming in on a regular basis is now, step away from that. It was a bit of a scary moment, but something that I felt strongly I needed to do to really achieve my end goal results. I'm really looking forward to maximize the returns I can get through real estate. And so making that transition now, I've been now, we'll say more about a month, out of it. I'm still keeping busy, obviously. I'm not, we'll say retired and just relaxing. I don't think I'll ever do that because I like being busy, but I'm more focused now on specifically what I'm doing with real estate. And it's given me a lot more time freedom, even with that, to set boundaries, right? So I have my start time and end time that I do per day. I treat it like any other job would be, where I can, say, okay, I'm done for today. I'm out. I can now spend my time with my family and do the things that I need to get done. And whereas before I had my W-2 during the day, but I'd still try to cram in some real estate during that time, during my lunch break. And then after work, I'd spend hours, going to meetups or on calls with investors. And so I'm now, more or less the real estate stuff has taken over the W-2 time frame, more or less, where I now have my evenings back. I'm a lot more relaxed, to not have the stress of trying to juggle all of that and make time for it all and take my lunch breaks for things, So now, blocked off time for exercise every day and blocked off time for lunch every day with my wife and my evenings with my family. So it's definitely been a lot less stressful and much better for, I think, my overall physical and mental health.
Good. I love it. And I love those hacks too about having your log on and log off time. Great that you're able to maintain all that. So let's get
my wife definitely makes sure I do that too. If I go past my hours, she kind of gives me the stink eyes. Hey, you gotta get off. So yeah,
well, that's great. Good to be missed, isn't it, Don?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so let's get deeper into real estate. You've been in commercial real estate for some time, and why don't you just sort of bridge the gap? You got in commercial real estate, you got into Happy Camper. Take us up to the present.
Well, let's see, up to the present. So that was honestly not too long ago. So I've been with 𝐻𝐵𝐶𝐶 Capital officially since about November of 2021. So this is a little over a year. Prior to that, I was the commercial real estate experience I had. I'm also involved with a team that does build-to-rent multifamily as well. So I kind of got involved with them first. I've also got some small development projects I've got with some other partners. But yeah, so that journey getting into 𝐻𝐵𝐶𝐶 Capital and what we do with RV Resorts was something that obviously a bit different that most people do. And it was not something that I would say I set out to do, a few years back. I was like, hey, I want to get into RV resorts. Nothing that was ever on my radar. Same for most people, I think, that are looking to invest. But it was something that came up for me as I was searching for higher returns. I was at that point, I was like, I want to get into something that gets great returns, to kind of help me push me to that point where I can leave my W-2. Again, my goal was always cash flow. And so when I heard that the types of cash flows that these RV campgrounds produce, I was super interested to learn more and wanted at least to invest and to start getting some of that cash flow. And in that process, of course, met a couple of guys who are now my partners, and we now purchase RV resorts. So it was kind of a strange transition, I guess, to that point. But in the little over a year I've been with the company now, it's been a very exciting and fun experience for me. I think as I talk to investors that are curious to learn more about this space and possibly invest with us, it's enjoyable for me talking about it. I actually enjoy talking about it, and it's enjoyable for those that get to hear about it, because I see people's their eyes go wide open when I tell them the kind of cash flows they can expect, and something that they're not used to seeing anywhere else, really. So it's been fun for me, and obviously just for being in this space makes me, I guess, unique in a way, in the sense that like, for example, you or all the other podcasts I've been on, I probably would not have ever been a guest on those podcasts if I didn't have something unique to talk about. So it's been for me, it definitely was a huge move to definitely progress along the path I was looking to pursue.
Yeah, awesome. And you're involved in two, what I would say, really cool niches. I've been saying for a long time, multifamily, it's getting really crowded. So I personally believe that it makes a lot of sense to diversify. Of course, I mean, you're not necessarily coming from multifamily, but I think many of our listeners are. So, wow, tell us about why RV campgrounds. Why is this the way to go?
Well, again, going back to what I was just saying, that for me initially, the biggest draw was those cash flows, the returns. As you know, and most people listening probably have seen, especially lately, it's getting kind of worse and worse, I think, where the cash flows in multifamily are almost non-existent to the point where, literally the other day I saw a local bank has a 5%, 12-month CD. I'm like, okay, if I can get a 5% return on zero risk thing right, in 12 months, then why would I go into something else that's maybe 4 to 6%, but higher risk? So it gets to that kind of point where you're like, that risk profile is definitely a factor for the returns that you're getting. Multifamily is getting to the point where it's almost to the level of bonds, basically, where it's lower returns and more or less we'll say lower risk, because it's going to become more institutionalized. And so for me, looking at those kinds of opportunities that had very low cash flow, and honestly, even over like a 5-year hold, maybe like a 2x multiple is about standard right now on that. That just wasn't enough for me. I was like, this is, for the time period I have to wait for it, and the risk of if this one thing goes wrong, the furnace system just blows up or something, and that a huge expense comes on they weren't expecting, all those returns are going to just go down. So I was like, the risk was too high and the returns were too low for me personally. And so when I found out that these RV resorts can deliver, about an average of a 15% cash on cash, that was my initial, like, for me, the eye-opening experience is like, I wanted to learn more about this and see. But on top of it is that with Happy Camper Capital, we are buying pretty much all of our properties we're getting off market. We go direct to the owners, find ones that are willing to sell. And so we are buying these well under market value, which gives us a huge amount of cushion in there for something that could go wrong. And the properties themselves, of course, have huge potential to just make them more efficient. Taken from a mom and pop owner, that keeps it very simple and easy to manage for them. We can come up with the processes and efficiencies and the proper staffing in place to really maximize the returns of a property. That's where we can just open up the floodgates more or less and get huge returns. So on our average deals, again, we're looking at about a 15% cash on cash with about a 2.5 to 3x multiple. So if I'm looking to invest, I've got, say, limited funds, I want to put it in where I get the highest returns possible. I can go to multifamily and get a small cash flow and somewhat of a decent return over 5 years, or I can go into something else and get double or triple what I'm getting on that. For me, just from an investment perspective, I would definitely be looking towards the campground side for sure.
Yeah, a lot of great reasons. Now, can you help us understand what sort of process you put in place? So I totally understand if you've got mom and pop there, they may not be answering the telephone all the time. I mean, they all kinds of things you can do. I want to say, gosh, you can. Some of the better things I've heard was giving out like bundles for s'mores, right? You can sell firewood, s'more kits. Like it's endless, right? What are some of your more creative ideas to generate revenue?
Well, like you say, that's what's really unique and great about these properties. There's almost unlimited upside potential. Anything you can think to add in there that makes sense, you could probably do. We've got a property in Indiana where we are building in an amphitheater to do concert events, right? Something that will draw people that may not be coming for camping, but they'll come there for some other experience or activity. And while they're there, they'll spend money at the store or other things, right? So all these things are just going to drive revenue to the property more so than just the camping alone. So some unique things, of course, like the amphitheater is pretty cool. We've got some people may be familiar with a franchise or company called Hunt Brothers Pizza. These are more or less we'll call it a little pizza machine thing that those alone generate very high returns. We're looking at probably 50% profit margins on those sales, and they do very well. Some cases where we've got one of our, the first property we actually bought has a small, or I said medium-sized pond on it. Something that initially was done. This was in Iowa. The partners there early on, they bought a couple paddle boards like from a local store nearby. brought them to the site, had them there for a bit. Nobody was really using them. Probably nobody had ever seen them before, knew what to do with them. So they took them out themselves on the water, used them a bit. And then right after that, people came up and started, wanting to use them. They rent them, right? So they easily pay for themselves within a month or two, and then they're pure profit after that. So like I said, the cool thing is you can just get creative. Whatever you can think of do that would be something that people want to do, right? They'll pay for it to do it. So we've got aqua parks, like those basically floating bouncy house on water, right? Of course, we got boat docks for people that like to go fishing or boating or skiing, all that kind of stuff. We've got one that, a property we were looking into recently that we were planning to add on a huge equestrian area. We've been surprised that we've gotten so many requests from people that have horses. They want, hey, is there a spot we can bring our horses to? So we had a property big enough that we're looking at setting off a whole X section that we'd add on a whole equestrian area for horseback riding trails and all that kind of stuff. People to pull in and take the horse out of their trailer and have them whatever we call it, tied up there or something. So anyway, it's just it's not just the rents alone. It's what else will bring people there that they're coming for us to have a good time.
Yeah, awesome, and very creative ideas. I think that's the best way to make money in real estate. Come up with a creative asset management plan. Well, RVs, I would say, are not too far out of the mainstream when it comes to commercial real estate, but marinas, that's something I think most people haven't thought about managing. So what is that like?
Honestly, it's for the most part fairly easy. I mean, we don't have yet any standalone marinas in our portfolio. We do have some RV properties that have marinas on them. We are still trying to get some marinas that are standalone. We've had a couple under contract, didn't quite meet all of our criteria. The marina space is honestly much more competitive than even the RV industry. So that's kind of part of our issue with that. But in a sense, the marinas are almost sort of like self-storage in a way. People that have a boat slip and they're ready for that spot, they're pretty much not going to leave, right? They're going to keep it there and have it always, and whether they use their boat or not, they're going to pay to keep that space. They don't lose it. So it's very low maintenance. Of course, you got to check the dock itself once in a while and sometimes replace some posts and things. We've got the property we have in the Ozarks area Ozarks area of Missouri. It has a very large marina on it. We are expanding that as well because there's a huge waiting list of people looking to get one of those spots on that marina. So we're expanding that, building it out. We've had to replace some of the section of the dock when we purchased it. So there's definitely maintenance, but again, once the people are in there, they're pretty much not going to leave.
Well, when you said that a marina was like self-storage, I thought you meant that people just pay to put their stuff there and they never come back and see it again.
Yeah, well, not quite like that, no.
Yeah,
but it's more of once they're paying to keep their stuff there, right?
Right. Yeah,
for the most part,
as a
they're going to
boater,
stay
I can
there
relate.
forever. Yeah.
Well, before we leave RVs, I just think this very fascinating thing. I mean, it's grown like crazy. COVID was a huge tailwind for you guys. But I've heard lately, and I'm obviously not the expert here, but I want to say Thor said that they were going to ship like way less next year. I don't even know what the statistics are. I mean, is this coming to an end? Are we slowing down, or is this something where we're going to, catch our breath and start moving up again?
Sure. Well, yeah, definitely. The trends are that sales are coming down for manufacturers and dealership sales, right? But at the same time, they're still well above what the highs were, a few years ago. So we're still kind of that peak point of new sales and shipments. I think people are still waiting for orders they put in, some time ago. So yeah, that even if sales slow down, doesn't mean they're going to stop. But on top of that, the people that currently own them and have an RV or have a fifth wheel trailer or something, they're still going to go use them. So that doesn't make any difference of not. Even if sales were to completely stop today, people that own them are still going to go out and use them. So it doesn't really affect people using the campgrounds. And if somebody owns an RV or something one day decides that it's not for them anymore, they're too sick or whatever, can't do it, they're going to sell that RV and somebody else is still going to buy it, and that person will then go use it. These are essentially luxury items. This is just like buying an additional vehicle to have in your family. This is a luxury toy that most people probably don't actually need, right? So if you got the money to buy one, you don't want it just sitting there in your driveway and not using it. You're kind of going back to your boat reference, right? If you got your boat in your dock or something, you're paying to stay there, you've got that boat you paid for. You want to try to use it as much as possible, right? It's not just going to be put away and forget about you spent tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on it, right? So yeah, that does not affect at all the people that are using the campgrounds.
Yeah, well, I figured obviously you're going to have, I mean, we've seen such a great increase, and it was even before COVID. I want to say even, is it maybe going back to 2000, way above trend increase in the number of RVs year over year. and we haven't seen the same increase in the number of pads.
As it is right now, as it stands based off the number of camping spots available for RVers. If everyone who owns an RV wanted to go out and camp in the same weekend, there would not be room enough for everybody to go, right? So inclusive of all of the campgrounds across the US. So yeah, there's definitely still huge demand, and people are still in most cases making reservations 6 months to a year ahead of time just to have a spot to go to. So yeah, there's still a huge demand for it.
Yeah, well, amazing. And I want to talk more about RVs, but I'm afraid, look, if we don't talk about build to rent and some of the other great things you're doing,
yeah,
we're not going to get to it. So tell us about build to rent. Why now? Why is build to rent such a hot topic?
Well, as you know, with the current existing value add multifamily space, it's very competitive still, even today. It has been for several years now. And so it gets to the point where buying existing asset, you're almost have to vastly overpay what you really should be to get the property. And then you got to still put a bunch of money into it to get it fixed up and make it nice and maintain it. And even then, you're still in most cases dealing with an older property. It will still have some other maintenance that's got to keep up on, and so it's always going to have issues. Whereas with the build to rent, you pretty much have no competition. You just got to find some great land, which in most cases you're not dealing with a lot of other competitors either. In some cases, like with when we have here in Idaho, we got it directly from the city actually. So very, very favorable price, well below what it would sell for on the open market. And so yeah, we have zero competition in that. And then we can design our own layout how we want to that fits with the city needs and whatnot, and then it's all brand new. So you typically have very low maintenance going for a very long time. Makes it much easier to rent or to sell, and you can typically build more or less for less than what it would cost to buy it and rehab it. So that gives you very much bigger margins at the end for your profits and for overall returns.
Absolutely. I mean, we're in a major housing crisis. People need a place to live. Not everybody wants an apartment. Not everybody can afford a single family home. Of course, these are single family homes. They are freestanding dwellings, but maybe a little more tightly packed, etc. I mean, I think it's a great solution. I'm really excited about build to rent, by the way. And you get all those amenities too. That's just amazing. It just seems like a great way to go.
For the ones that we're building, we do it typically in a few phases. We're doing like large. These are not a development of a few, a couple dozen single families. We typically do the first phase is a bunch of like townhomes, and we do apartment buildings after that. So we're looking at like 700 to 800 unit developments. What we're doing here, and so with that though, we're not just making a big dense, think of like a the projects type thing where it's just pure buildings and cement, right? These are very open space, green space, walking trails, splash pads, all things that make it feel like a full community where people actually want to come and stay. They'll say, yeah, I want to go live there. In fact, we had one of our city meetings here in Idaho Falls. One of the city members mentioned that he wanted to go live there because he saw that the plans that what we're going to do with it, it was just so amazing. So yeah, like you said, this is a full on. We're dealing with people's emotions and feeling of community and a place to be. If people want to be somewhere where they feel a part of something and feel like almost like a home ownership pride, even though they don't own the place, just to know that they live in this awesome little community.
Yeah, all good reasons. And you had all that and then a smaller lawn to cut. So got to say that's a total win-win. Well, okay, as you mentioned being from Idaho, I know that Idaho has been really interesting in terms of real estate prices. I mean, things just went up like crazy. And now, particularly in the single family home space, things are coming down. Of course, commercial real estate does tend to be, it's not emotion driven like that home you were talking about. So it tends not to be quite as driven up and down by such extremes. But what is it like out there? Or how is that affecting other types of real estate out there in Idaho?
So my wife is a realtor here as well. So we're definitely very much in pulse with the market and what's going on around here. So where I'm at in eastern Idaho, it's very different than the Boise market. Most people, you think of Idaho, you're going to think of Boise, right? So Boise definitely had a much bigger increase in everything. And so here on eastern Idaho, it's almost its own unique little market. So even during the 2008, 2009 market crash, this area was not as affected as other areas, just because it's somewhat more stable. Of course, there are still the increases, decreases, but definitely not to the extremes that you see in much bigger markets. So here locally where I'm at, yeah, things are starting to come down slightly, not I wouldn't say a lot. I think we may have seen maybe about 5% decrease lately, but it's I don't know, it's kind of a different feel. I can't really explain honestly, but it obviously does affect people's I guess investment strategies and what they're looking to do. This area definitely has had some appreciation. not quite the extreme as Boise, but we definitely still had, homes here that were maybe in 2018 maybe would have sold for 200,000, or now, around like the 400,000 and up price. So we've definitely have had, doubling of prices here in the last few years. But for what people are buying now, like a lot of my wife's clients are out of state investors buying here in this area. We're, just for those that don't know this area, we're like about an hour and a half away from Yellowstone Park. So it's a very big touristy area still, just in the general, for we're close to camping and mountains and trails and lakes and stuff. She's got a lot of her clients that are buying here in this area for Airbnb, short-term rentals, because they do very well for people that are traveling through, going to those sites. Or we've got several big employers around this area. One of the few national laboratories is out here. So we get a lot of people traveling through for family or for other things going on. So Airbnbs do very well in this area. As of right now, they're still not too regulated to be in fear of that. People are still moving here as well. It's still a great area to have a nice little community. We have very low crime here, which is great. It makes a great place to raise families and not have to worry about too much stuff. For me in particular,
I'm from Detroit, I think that's a great thing.
yeah, exactly. I grew up here when I was young, and then we later moved to Nebraska, where I pretty much grew up around the Omaha. Once I had children, even in Omaha, we were like, we didn't let our kids go past our view, down the block, because, still, things happen. And so I kept telling my wife, I'd love to go back here where I remember when I was like a 4-year-old kid running around the town and have no concerns of all of anything. So I was like, I'd love to have my kids have that kind of experience where they can just, not be afraid to go outside. So it's a great area to live in. And for me personally, as a, say an investor, right, as a landlord, I have properties here as well that I own, also manage some for other people as well as a property manager. In this area, since I've been investing here since 2017, I've never once had a single eviction. I've never once had to deal with the tenant that damaged the property, caused problems or was late payments, any of that kind of stuff. So as far as a investment perspective, I much prefer that versus the properties I had like in Arkansas, where I had tons of evictions, had lots of turnovers, I had lots of repair and maintenance costs every time somebody left. So I was like, man, why would people are drawn to those kind of areas for the lower cost to buy. You think, hey, I'm getting a great deal. I'm getting a 2-for-1 price basically. But then you deal with all those other expenses, the turnovers, evictions, and the repairs. In the end, it's not worth it. And you get very little appreciation versus an area like this, where you're not dealing with those issues. You may pay a bit higher up front, but it's much more peaceful long term. You get much more appreciation. And so in the end, you actually do much better investing in an area like this versus those lower cost areas, and not to deal with those problems. So for me, that's another great feature about an area like this that I definitely would prefer to invest in.
Well, even I would imagine that recession fears probably don't trouble you too much. You become homeless in California, just go drive your RV to Idaho. You can stay at one of Don's places. I'm sure you'll leave a light on.
Sure.
All right, awesome. Well, I think we probably have to start to wrap up. So I'd like to ask you a couple more challenging questions. I think we can't let you out too easily. What is your number one productivity hack?
Productivity hack. So this is definitely is something that's, I guess, evolved over time. Initially, back when I was first starting off, it was setting alarms on my phone. Again, make sure don't forget to do this. I had like probably 10 to 12 different alarms on my phone to remind me to do certain things. Eventually, I got to the point where I started using Google Calendars. I started scheduling things on there so I wouldn't forget things. And then for me, it's been, of course, using Calendly was a big thing as I got more involved in the commercial real estate and talking to investors. Initially, I was like, when's a good time for you to talk? And when, if you have to go back and forth through 3 emails to schedule a call. And then I finally get to the point where I'm using Calendly. I just say, here, schedule a call on my time. And so kind of using all those things, but the biggest thing I think for productivity is having those time blockers, right? So I set aside a certain time where, okay, nobody can schedule a time to call me during this time because I'm using that for something. I say, okay, even if it's during my say work hours, I'll block off time, say I'm using this time for lead generation or something else that I'm specifically doing. So I make sure that it's in my calendar, it's in my schedule, it's part of my daily routine. I must do this during this time and nothing else. So I have no distractions. So that's been probably the biggest productivity help to me in line where I should be, because it's easy to get distracted and say, I'm going to do this today, but end up doing 10 other things because, I got an email or whatever else came up. I try to ignore those things and focus on what I have set aside for that certain time.
Yeah, great ideas. And then if you could have a billboard, what would it say?
Oh boy, a billboard about me. I guess, the biggest thing that I want to share with people is, things that I've learned myself from real estate, that you don't have to work until you die. So I'd say something like that, buy back your time, buy your time freedom, and learn how to do it through real estate. I many times call real estate investing as the shortcut to financial independence. Before I really got into real estate, I was following that financial independence path, looking at the FIRE movement stuff. And for me, I was never, a high income earner. So I never could say, okay, I'm going to build up $1 million portfolio of my IRA and then retire in 2 years. That was never going to happen. I was like, but if I can produce the income I need through investing in real estate, then I can get to that number I need easier and faster than trying just to build up a huge amount in my IRA. So yeah, I think it's something that's very doable for people. And there are ways you can learn to do it with, very little or maybe zero money out of pocket to get started.
Outstanding. Well, this is where I like to head into the section of the interview I call the 7. So are you up to the challenge, Don? You ready to step up?
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right. Actually, before we do this, I want to say, when I answered the question about the billboard, I thought that you'd say something like invest where you play. Like you practically have a billboard behind you. If you're watching us on YouTube, I'm talking about his Happy Capper capital background. But anyway, it's great. It's a good tagline, by the way. All right, let's settle in here. So if you could be known for only one thing, what would it be?
I think above all, and it's something that it's been part of me for a long time. I'd say it's if I were to say to die today is when you read my eulogy or something, then yeah, it was that I'm honest and caring. I always try to tell the truth, and I'm always willing to help people.
What is the greatest lesson in leadership that you have learned as an entrepreneur?
As an entrepreneur, I'd say it's learning to delegate and not take everything on yourself. I've always been the type that I like to make sure things are done the way I want it done, but I've learned that there's no way you can do it all yourself. So you have to learn how to let go and trust other people can do the job.
What is the most important personal characteristic to your success?
I believe it, again, going back to my the first question, I'm honest. People, luckily, when they get to know me, they trust me and know that I'm not out to get one over on anybody or pull the sheets over your eyes, whatever that saying is. I do what I say and I say what I do. So I give my word about something. You can trust that it's going to get done.
All right, let's take a nod to the randomness of the universe. And I've got my random question cards here. Just tell me when to stop cutting this deck.
It's a lot of cards. One more. Stop there.
Ooh, I'm glad you're out of your W-2 now, because the question of today is, what's the worst job you ever had? Now, you stayed there for 19 years, so I gather you're not going to say your last one.
Yeah. Well, I've not had a whole lot of jobs of my lifetime. I was never the type the job hopper. I usually get somewhere and I stay there for a while. But worst job. So I could probably count on one hand how many jobs I've had. The worst one, man, hard to say, honestly. Probably no. Worst one. I had it for like 2 weeks. It was kind of like an in-between jobs. It's like I'm the type of I at one point lost the job I had, and I'm not the type to sit around and not take anything, because like I got a family to take care of. I'll take whatever job comes up. So I had a job for about 2 weeks before I finally got the one I wanted, and the one I was at now for 19 years. But about 2 weeks I was in training still, technically, I guess. But I worked for a what do you call those? A call center that does collections, so a collection agency, but specifically though on what do you call them? Dead accounts, where somebody actually passed away.
Oh yeah, I used to work for a debt collection agency. I was in IT though, by the way, but I'd hear those calls. There's a lot of vocal talent out there. Yeah. Sir, this is a debt that you incurred. That was my favorite line. Oh yeah, I'd hear that every evening after people would leave. There would be this one guy, and he'd continue working the phone all evening. I'd hear that about 5 times. Sir, this is a debt that you incurred.
Yeah. Well, again, these were like probate. These were people that passed away, trying to collect on accounts where somebody died, so from their family members, right? So yeah, that made it more difficult and more emotional for sure. The best calls I had actually on that, since because I do speak Spanish, they put me on some Spanish calls, and those ones were actually enjoyed a bit more, because I at least could use that skill and talk to people. But yeah, it was one of those things where like I felt bad. I didn't want to be collecting money from people whose family that just died. So yeah, it was a rough one. I was glad I was out of there within 2 weeks and never got out of the training of it. Yeah.
All right. Wow. That one takes the cake. Can you name a book that's helped to forge you as a leader and as an entrepreneur?
There's been several books I've read over the last 5 years. To be honest, I was never much of a book reader. I hated reading books, honestly, pretty much most of my life, and this was something that was really enjoyable. Like it had to be entertaining. But once I got into real estate, that's why I started reading a lot. I started reading tons of books on real estate and finance, taxes, and that kind of stuff. But I would say probably one that I like a lot, and I recommend to people that are kind of at that next level, they're trying to really take the next step, is probably Set for Life. It's the way I look at those that don't know it's Set for Life, one of the Bigger Pockets book, but it's kind of like I like it as like the next step after you read Rich Dad Poor Dad. This is now that kind of like how to follow up on that, what steps to take next and what to do next. So it's a great one for people that are kind of just more or less beginning, but kind of are ready to start investing and start making changes in their life to kind of see what can happen if you make the right moves.
Can you describe a failure or misstep and what it taught you?
I'd say the second property I bought, which actually was two fourplexes I bought in Arkansas, kind of as I mentioned before, those properties in Arkansas, they gave me some problems. It was an area, a market I was not at all familiar with. I probably had no business to be investing there at the time, but I was, I guess somewhat intrigued and sold on it by the broker I was talking to at the time, who had these off market, or pocket listings for a couple fourplexes. Seemed like a great price. The returns seemed great on paper and everything. She definitely upsold me on the location for these and the previous owner of the properties and all that stuff. So it all looked great and sounded great. I probably trusted her a little bit too much. And so in the end, I made probably no money on those properties. I did buy them at the end of like December 2018 is when I closed on them. The first year was okay. Then of course COVID set in, got worse, and then I kept waiting each year for it to get better. Never did. So what I learned from that, but just to finish that story, I did sell those properties now this last year, August of this last year. I sold both of them, reinvested all that capital back into Happy Camper Capital now to get great returns and cash flows without dealing with those evictions and stuff. But what I learned from that is kind of like from your past, I guess a science thing is right. Trust but verify. So I might say, okay, yeah, I'll take her word for it that these are great properties, great location, all that stuff. But I need to do some more research on myself. I should have been calling like the local police stations and calling the other property managers in the area just to kind of get general feel. Maybe going on Bigger Pockets or other forums and asking people in that area, hey, what do you think about this location, this area? Who knows about it? To kind of get my boots on the ground to give me some firsthand experience. Not from somebody who's just trying to sell me something. So I definitely have learned that to not be as trusting as I tend to trust people. I believe that people are good and aren't trying to get one over on me. For the most part. But so yeah, I've learned to maybe second guess myself sometimes and not take people just for their word all the time.
Can you give us a quote to help forge our listeners as leaders and entrepreneurs?
So for me, this is one that I've tried to use to guide me quite a bit. I may not get the exact words right anymore, but it's something along the lines of, no success in life can account for failure in the home. And that goes back to, trying to do everything you can to build wealth or create income, all these things. But spending all your time doing that you're not taking care of your family's actual needs. In most cases, yeah, it's great to provide your family and provide the things that they need and maybe want. But in the end, what really matters is you being present and being with your family and creating those memories and experiences that you're not going to get back. You might say, I spent the last 20 years building this great wealth for my family that they can now enjoy and stuff. But in the end, that's not what most people really care about. Having somebody, their parents in particular, right, being there with the family, being present, and having those memories is what's going to really matter in the end.
Now, how can our listeners reach out to you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. You can go to our website, happycampercapital.com. You can find me there. Go to the About Us tab. You'll see me. You can click on my profile, find the link to schedule a call with me, and we can talk about how you want to invest in campgrounds and how we can help you reach your financial goals.
Outstanding, Don. Thank you for taking your time to share your knowledge and experience with our audience.
Thanks, George, for having me.